Hey guys, welcome to Heal, Survive, and Thrive. This week we're gonna dive into a pretty legit topic because boundaries is something that if you're codependent, you're coming out of a toxic relationship, you've been with someone who's narcissistic, you don't have them. Anyone who struggles with low self-esteem, poor, not a ton of standards. I mean, I think we all have standards, but the higher the standard, the more comfortable you feel with enforcing boundaries. And boundaries are everything. You have to be able to verbally communicate with people. You have to be able to tell people what you think and how you feel without, I don't want to say pushback because you're going to get pushback from a toxic person, not a healthy person, but it'll make you feel uncomfortable in the beginning because it's not something that you've ever been used to doing. And you're going to have to get comfortable with people not liking your boundaries, respecting your boundaries, but it is part of life. I'm sorry. It's a part of being a grown up. It's part of being an adult. We have to be able to communicate with people calmly, hold on to ourselves while someone loses their shit and gets, unhappy with what it is that we have to say. You're protecting your peace, your energy, your well-being. And let's be honest, most of us weren't really taught how to have boundaries. I remember growing up, my mom would just burst into my room whenever she felt like it. There was no knocking on the door. There was no respecting of my own space. So, and boundaries is like, it's such a big thing in terms of your next relationship. Because remember, it's your standards and then it's boundaries. If you grew up in a home where boundaries weren't respected, or if you've been in relationships with someone who's toxic, then you need help. I'm sorry, but you need some help with boundaries. Learning all of the stuff that we talk about, whether it's narcissism or codependency or emotional abuse, it's not about learning those things. Those things are just the eye opener. It is always going to be about you and how you take care of yourself and why people struggle with boundaries. Why do you struggle with boundaries? What is the fear? So the signs that, one of the other reasons that I really want to do this, because I wanted to share really the signs that your boundaries need work. Some people always think that they have great boundaries or they think that they have standards. They don't want to admit that they're insecure or weak or they don't have self-esteem. Like no one wants to admit that. Everyone thinks that they're the healthiest person in the world. But you're not. I'm sorry. Like none of us are. None of us fully got what it is that we were supposed to get. So that's why we're here and that's why we're learning like what should it look like. So let's start with some hard truths. If you constantly feel drained, if you feel resentful, or if you feel like you have been taken advantage of, then you have weak boundaries, or maybe they're just like completely non-existent. I can check the box on all of those. I have felt drained from people. I have felt resentful of people. I don't know if I've necessarily felt like I was taken advantage of because I just was more feeling the resent of what I felt like I was contributing and that people weren't pulling their weight. So when you don't feel like someone's pulling their weight, then yeah, you probably have some weak boundaries. So let's go over some of like the biggest reasons that you suck at boundaries, basically. One of them is going to be the fear of rejection or abandonment that you've experienced. I think a lot of times, many of us, we just fear unconsciously way in the back because we've been rejected, whether it was by our parents and not listening or not validating us, whether it was by a person. Rejection and abandonment isn't just about someone physically leaving. It's about someone also not emotionally really even like being there for you. So when you experience that, you fear that if I say something that you're going to leave. I know it doesn't like make sense, but that really is the underlining thought that's in the back of your mind that prevents you from not doing anything at all or not saying anything at all. You might struggle with not even being aware of what you should say or how you do feel. But the second part is if you aren't or if you are, it doesn't really matter. The second part is being afraid to say anything at all. Now, no one is going to give you grief for your boundaries unless they're looking to take advantage of the situation. And in that sense, boundaries is amazing because it helps you to see who people are, what they're capable of, whether it's new people, old people, it doesn't matter. You can see, and now you start to be able to put people in boxes. Like, okay, this person's just looking to take advantage. Okay, this person didn't respect my boundaries. Okay, this person gave me guilt. So they may give you guilt, they may give you some shame, or you may give your own self guilt. If guilt is your thing, where you just feel uncomfortable telling someone, hey, this bothered me. Hey, I didn't like when you did that. Hey, when I agreed to pick you up, you said 4:30 and it's now 5 and you're making me wait outside. Whatever the example is, if guilt is your thing, you were raised by people that when you did express how you feel, they made you feel bad. But guilt doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means you're stepping a little bit outside of your comfort zone. So you might have an old programming that says, hey, if I do this, then it's wrong. Or what if this person is upset? But all of those, with all of this, with every single thing that I ever will talk about, it always kind of circles back to self-parenting, because it is about, in that moment, you being able to be the adult for yourself. The child in you, the part of you that has gone through those experiences needs coaching, needs therapy, needs the adult, needs the parent. It needs someone that can see beyond how it feels right now. So will you have a fear of abandonment, rejection? Yep. Will you feel guilt at times? Probably, because you've never done this before and this is very uncomfortable for you to do. Will you mess up your words? Will you maybe react when that person tries to give you grief? Probably, because again, this isn't something that you've ever done. If you grew up in a household where no one had healthy boundaries, you will never know what it feels like to set them. You might even think that you might even think you're being self-righteous, or that you want everything your way. You start to play these games in the mind, and you have to learn. Right now, you're training the adult. You don't train how to be the wounded child. You already have those inside, all of those parts of inside of you. You have the insecurity, you have the fear, you have the stories. That stuff's just easy. It just comes up naturally, unfortunately, because of what you've been through. You are listening to this, you're investing in courses, you're doing the coaching every week, you're doing all this work because you're trying to train the parent to actually take care of you. So because you didn't have the role models that were showing you how to be the healthy parent. What should I do? What do boundaries look like? How do I respond when someone, crosses that line? Even just being able to communicate with someone else. How do I respond when someone crosses the line? That right there, not a lot of people know how to do, because the first thing that they do is they get defensive or they get an attitude. No, being able to communicate effectively, efficiently, and calmly is the sign of a healthy person. Someone who is not healthy is their ego is going to get triggered. They're going to shut down, or they're going to start yelling, or they're going to really push something on you to try to control the situation. So you didn't have the role models. If you're a people pleaser, then saying no feels pretty much impossible, because it's not something that is even remotely on your radar. When I was really knee deep in this, it wasn't that I was trying to please. It wasn't that I was always asking for all these opinions, because I just I didn't realize what I was doing. That's kind of the unfortunate part of being wounded and having absolutely no idea. It's not that people are bad and everyone's walking around with the wounds. It's just that no one really knows what's going on inside of them. So until you start really awakening and saying, okay, I need to take a little bit more responsibility for myself, that's when you stop and kind of pause and realize just how many things you're doing or what you've been through that affects you today. And I talk about that in my 9 Weeks to Emotional Healing course, where we talk about all of the emotional wounds that you could ever experience, where they came from, how they show up in your life. And that's really the stepping stone towards you even healing your boundaries. And then of course, self-parenting is being able to hold on to yourself and take care of yourself emotionally, mentally. So it doesn't bother you if someone doesn't respect your boundaries. Your ego's not so offended because, oh my God, this person just isn't doing what I say. No, you enforce your boundaries, you wipe your hands, you call it a day, and you move on. So you're not as needy, as pleasing, as wanting something from someone that can't give it to you. And really at the end of the day, you are the only one that can always give you every single thing that you need in every single moment. So when you start giving yourself what you need every single day and every single moment, as much as you possibly can, you're not offended when someone can't. So you might grieve it, you might get angry by it, but you process it in a healthier way, and then you're able to move on with your life. You're not like hanging on to the daddy issue that you have still, being a 60-year-old man, about how, he didn't go to your baseball game. Like, you're not hanging on to all that stuff. You've let it go because you're not a child anymore. You have practiced and learned how to be the healthy adult, and you're actively being that. And it is consistent work and practice. And it is something that you have to do a lot for the rest of your life until it becomes a part of you. And then it's not so much walking on eggshells or, always trying to do the right thing or say the right thing. You just know how to take care of yourself. And it's like a real comforting feeling. When you're at that level, there's a lot of people that would typically avoid setting boundaries, but when you're at that level, you don't. Not that you're looking to pick fights, not that you're looking to nitpick at every little thing, but you also are totally fine with confrontation, and confrontation meaning verbal communication of boundaries and standards. But here's the thing, avoiding the conflict, it's not really going to make the problem go away. It just makes you suffer more, basically, especially if you're at the place where a boundary has been violated. Like, you're not happy. That you don't like the way that makes you feel. So let's do a little signs your boundaries need work, because I think we all think that we're great communicators, that we're healthy, that we're confident, that we have great boundaries, but we're just not. So if you feel drained after interacting with certain people, you need to write down who those people are. Number one, boundaries that are lacking in that relationship. If you say yes when you really want to say no, boundaries are lacking. And I want you to think of specific people. So I'm going to list all of these kind of like signs that your boundaries need work, but I want you to think about specific people. And chances are it's kind of going to be the same people. If you feel guilty putting yourself first, who is that person? When you're around that you just feel guilty. Something that I used to do was, say I was like on the couch just scrolling. If someone came in the room, I immediately sat up and I looked productive, because it was the guilt of, I have to always be on. I have to always be doing something. I have to always be at someone else's level. I have to give just as much as they're giving. So it was that feeling guilt that I was putting on myself. So the boundaries don't always have to do with the other person. They can sometimes have to do with yourself. So I had to give myself good boundaries to say, I deserve to actually sit here and do nothing. And I didn't have to compete with someone else or be at their level. Other signs that your boundaries are kind of weak is, I don't want to say just people that are just disrespectful, and you have to determine what that is. Like, what is disrespect to you? There are some just, standard signs of disrespect, and anything under the emotional abusive guide or umbrella, I would say, is disrespectful. But there are a lot of people that you could be 5 or 10 minutes late and it wouldn't bother them. I'm a very punctual person. So if you say you're going to be there at 4:00, I'm usually there at 3:50, 3:55. So consistent being late, even by 10 minutes, that's a problem for me. So what is that for you? Understanding yourself to know what those boundaries are. Who are the people in your life that when you do say no and they give you a little pushback, and maybe they're not intentionally pushing back because they're crazy toxic. Maybe they just, it's a little pushback. It's okay. Well, it's not okay, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not anything crazy, but you over-explain. You want someone to hear your story on why you're saying no and agree with you. So who do you do that with? If you feel responsible for someone being upset because you said no, or because that you said anything at all, the emotion that they feel, do you feel responsible for that? I definitely did for many, many years. And it was more not the sadness, it was the anger. So I was like, okay, if someone's upset, like, I feel bad. I don't want them to be upset. I don't feel bad when someone's upset anymore. And that's not because I'm heartless. It's because I'm doing what I need to do for me, and you learning how to take care of you, that's your job. So now I don't feel that kind of guilt or shame or anything uncomfortable. I don't feel responsible for how you're feeling whatsoever. So now let's talk about solutions, because we have to figure out how do we fix all of these freaking problems. I want you to, and we kind of touched on this, but I really want you to make a list of, here we go. We're going to do some coaching here. I want you to make a list of what are the non-negotiables. And you don't have to, you may not know this like off the top of your head, like me with being late. Okay. You might know a couple. Like, I don't like if someone yells in my face. Okay, cool. But I do want you to think about your whole life, people that you've had issues with. Who have you had a little, like, not necessarily like beef with, but just like a little rare at times, like the claws come out a little bit, like, who drains you, who makes you feel safe, what behaviors do those people have that do drain you, that stress you out, that, get your nerves going, like what is it that they do? Do they play the victim? Do they ask for everything? Do they expect you to solve all their problems? Like what are those non-negotiables for you? And how do the people in your life, what do they do you feel that crosses boundaries? That's number one. Number two, anyone who is listening to this needs more practice with saying no, and that no is the complete sentence. You don't owe the explanation. If you do want to give it, that's okay. No doesn't have to be your complete sentence. For some people, it very well will be, i.e. someone who's narcissistic, because no explanation do they care about. But let's say the person isn't narcissistic and you do want to give an explanation to see, okay, ready? To see if they have self-awareness to go beyond what it is that they want, to see the bigger picture, right? That it's not just about them. So we could give that explanation to see what someone is capable of doing when I give you the explanation. So if I say no because I'm tired, or no because that doesn't work for me, blah, 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 what does that person do with it? Now you get to see if we're dealing with a really toxic person or someone who maybe isn't like crazy narcissistic or anything, like that. No personality disorder stuff. It's just a person that didn't initially like the no because they really wanted this. So maybe they tried to make you feel guilty or something like that. So that's number two. We got to practice saying no. And who are the people that you need to say more no's to? The next thing, I want you to practice small, not big. So if setting boundaries feels absolutely scary for you, then I want you to start with small ones. I want you to start with just telling a friend that you can't talk right now, instead of always making yourself available to every single person that wants to talk to you. People who will push back when you start setting boundaries, those are the people that you're going to have to stay firm with. And I know you don't want to hear that because it might like scare you or intimidate you. Hold on, I'm just moving my mic. But I mean, you have to do it. And I think it gets a little easier when you target, okay, who is this one person? And you stop being so scared about being clear, being direct, and just communicating with this person. You start saying, okay, there's nothing to really be intimidated by. I just haven't done this consistently with this person. So I'm going to prepare for pushback. I'm going to know that this person just wants to benefit from either taking advantage of me or getting what they want from me, and that this isn't even about me, so I shouldn't take it personally. I'm going to rewire how I feel about myself, and that I should be able to say, no, this isn't okay, or no, I don't want to do this. And it's okay if someone's uncomfortable, but that's not my responsibility. I think the more you remind yourself of these things, you start to adopt that kind of mindset. When you adopt the mindset, then it's easier for you to follow through with these different stages or things that, the 1, 2, 3s of boundaries. So when you start setting strong boundaries, what I want you to know is you're going to actually feel super confident. First of all, when the first time you say something to someone that you've never said before, and we're not getting erratic, we're not yelling, we're not screaming, just your ability to like talk to someone, stand up for yourself, you have self-respect. That builds confidence. You're not resentful anymore. You don't carry resent because you're starting to learn what people are capable of. You're starting to put them into boxes. You start to attract better relationships because people, you know where people stand and they know where you stand, and you start to, doesn't mean they're going to change. No, they'll probably find someone else to see if they can take advantage of, but they won't come to you. They won't behave in the way that they do around you because they're not getting what it is that they want or they used to get from you. That's the point. That's why this is helpful when it comes to even like narcissistic relationships. You're not going to change that person, but you will absolutely get them to operate differently around you because they're going to learn they're not getting fed from you anymore. You're not, just a wallflower that's willing to get stepped all over. You're just not just this easygoing person. No, being that easygoing was actually an unhealthy trait that you had based on low self-esteem. So you don't have that anymore. So to kind of wrap it up, your boundaries are what? They're a reflection of how you think about yourself, how you value yourself. You having weak boundaries is just going to lead to either burnout, resentment, and the strong boundaries is going to lead to you feeling more confident and at peace. And honestly, you're going to have better relationships. Even with the people that don't mean to take advantage, but they do a little bit, you'll have a better relationship even with them because you won't be angry and resentful towards that person, or you won't feel so depleted. If you're really, really struggling with this, I urge you, book a session, 1 quick hour. Really understand, where do you struggle? Because everyone does struggle in different areas. There are some people that can verbally communicate, but when they get pushback, they absolutely freak out. Either they, like a turtle, they kind of like go in their shell and just tail between their legs, or they get enraged. I mean, that's not okay either. So send me an email, register for a session. Let's talk today. I'm so excited that you guys came. Hopefully the weather is nice where you are. Hopefully spring is on its way over here. I wish you guys all the best, and I'll see you in the next episode.